Hey guys, what's up, and welcome back to yet another episode of the BrkThru podcast. I promise you'll be coming back every week, getting you in episodes, but this time we have someone really, really spectacular. We have Zoheb Khan with us on the podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Zoheb.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
When we thought of starting this podcast, you were definitely one of my top guests that I wanted to get. And last year itself, we approached you, and we were trying to get a podcast sorted out with you. We had a lot of technical issues. The lockdown came in, the lockdowns come back again, and
Mhm.
we're really late, but finally we've got you on the podcast. And thank you so much for giving us your time, man. Thank you so much. How's it going, though?
It's going good. Work-wise, I'm still doing projects, and only drawback is that the academy has to be kept shut.
Of course, yeah.
So
That's
yeah, so my students are complaining a bit, but I have to think of their safety also. So I'll have to keep it shut until it opens back up.
Wow. So you've actually had a broad career in terms of producing music, in terms of teaching. I want to kind of take you through your entire journey from the starting, and I want to understand how did this whole music scene happen, because it's a very unconventional career, and the
Yeah,
route you've taken right now is more unconventional, the route of teaching. So if you
yeah.
could tell me right from the beginning, how did you start in terms of music? Because I was having a word with Navid. So if you guys don't know, Zoeb is Navid Khan Browncoat's real brother, and I was telling him that we have Zoeb sir on the podcast, and he was like, he was into music from back in the day. Music, painting, art, anything to do with art. You were there back in the day. So tell us about the whole childhood journey. How did it eventually happen for you?
Okay. Yeah, so I was like definitely always inclined towards art. So I was doing a lot of paintings in my school time, and I did wanted to like go into photography,
Okay.
but that didn't happen. Then I wanted to get into animation, but even that didn't happen. So eventually, I found music to be my savior, and I would like to thank Naved for introducing me to electronic music, because before that, Bollywood was all that I knew of.
Okay.
So he got into the music field first, and he was basically doing DJing back then.
Okay.
I was still in school when he started DJing,
Okay.
so he got like introduced me to a lot of cool artists, and then the computer era came in, and then luckily we had a computer at home, and yeah, we started playing with different softwares. The first one we got our hands on was the Atomics, which is now known as Virtual DJ.
Virtual DJ. Yes.
Yeah, so we would just mash up different tracks together, and we would just loop one bar and then mix the whole track with it. So that's how it started. But obviously, it was a limited software. Like
Of
we
course.
couldn't do much. It wasn't a production software. So after playing with it, I like basically found FL Studio, and it was still like I was still looking for different software. So I was going through Reason, Cubase, and everything. But in FL, I found some luck. I was able to make something, because other softwares are completely blank. And obviously, like internet was fairly new
Okay.
in India at that time, so there was no YouTube or any forums that I could access to learn. So it was all trial and error. So
Okay.
my first 3-4 years went in trial and error to figure out how this software works.
Okay.
And then it was like I just opened a Pandora's box, because the learning never stopped. Because I tried to figure out one thing, and there were four more things I had to learn because of that. So it never stopped. But it's been a wonderful journey learning it. And after doing a lot of production for movies, I decided, because I'm like a +2 dropout. After 12th, I didn't do any education.
Okay.
So I was like, I should have some backup. So I did my audio engineering in Mumbai itself. So I have a diploma in audio engineering, and from then I continued my musical journey.
So, but while in childhood, did you ever think that this is going to be my calling? Bachpan mein, what was your thought? What should I do with my career? What was your career thought? What was your dream?
It was definitely something to do with art. I had no clue what I was
Okay.
going to do eventually, but I knew it was going to be something art related. And I was hoping my parents would support, and they have been very supportive with our
Wow.
music.
I think
Initially,
when you come to the
I,
whole music scene at the starting, I think family also is a bit skeptical. But I think you use the word audio engineering, and that's when I think they must have said kuch to kar raha hai decent.
no, actually, audio engineering came in much later. So
Okay.
initially, when Navid was starting DJing, I mean, they were a bit skeptical, but we managed to convince them. And once they saw that we are in good company in terms of people that we are working with, and we are doing it passionately, I think they let us do it. So they were quite understanding about it.
Yeah, because you mentioned FL Studio. I think 99% of the people who, I mean, even for me, that was my first software, which I thought kind of made sense. It seemed pretty easy.
Yeah,
I think Virtual
yeah,
DJ was, again, obviously, even I started off, playing two tracks at the same time. I don't even remember the keys. It was do saath mein bajao, so it would to play together, and then we figured out, how to match everything. In
yeah,
terms of Fruity Loops, I personally have felt that. I mean, I'm pretty sure while you guys were, exploring that software, not much knowledge was
mhm,
available. I think one or two videos were there when I started off. For you,
mhm,
that there's a whole period of from downloading the software and then trying to figure out how do you get a track looking. It should actually look like a track. There's a lot of
yeah,
frustration that happens at 1 2 months, and it still happens to me right now because I'm trying to check out some other doors, and it still kind of doesn't make sense for me in certain aspects. How did you
yeah.
overcome that journey, and what were you doing? Because from that amateur beat to making something which sounds like a song, how did you overcome that journey?
Oh, it's a good question. So basically, I had no idea how the arrangements work in a song, and luckily there were a lot of demo projects that were given by FL Studio in
Yeah,
the
of
DAW.
course. Yeah.
So you get to see how everything, like how the other artists have done it, and I would just try to replicate that same effect into my projects. And eventually I found a forum where people would exchange their projects, so that helped a lot. And I would ask questions to different artists, like I would ask them for reviews, and that's how I improved my workflow.
Wow. And do you remember what exactly was the first track you made? Any memory of your first official project?
uh, you're talking about 2000, 2001. So like, I mean, a lot of it was just crap. uh, I think we started off with a lot of bootleg remixes back then.
Yeah, of
So
course.
I'm
Yeah.
talking about, I think, 2002, 2003, I think. So that gave us a lot of push, because obviously, when you work on a bootleg or a remix, the arrangement, the composition is ready. You just have to program around it. So the bigger hurdle of composing, recording, and arranging is already done by the other artist. So you're just trying to do ornamentation around what's been already done. So
Yeah, I agree.
that really helped, and that helped us in understanding how basically the arrangements work.
Mhm.
That was really helpful.
Yes, you've also been. I mean, everyone knows you've been actively involved with a lot of work. You've been doing work with some really, really great artists, Vishal Shekhar. I think you've
Yeah,
been doing a lot of work for the Bollywood industry as well. Up till
yeah.
now, you're working with some of the finest, record labels with a lot of artists from different genres. How was the experience, and how did you get in? I mean, how did you step into your, how did you land your first Bollywood project, whatever it was? How did you get into the door? Because I think that's the most difficult thing, and I think that's the eventual goal for someone who wants to who's born and brought up in Bombay and India, that I want to
Yeah.
get somehow to Bollywood. So how was that experience, and how did it come across for you?
So I think the first Bollywood project we got was in 2004. That was this movie Musafir.
Hi.
Yeah.
That
And
as soon as you say the song's name, that tune comes into your head. I think everyone who's all the new audiences, if you haven't heard, yes, I mean, I wouldn't want to take the story away from you. If you could just, yeah, go ahead.
so before that, for at least a year or two, we were doing a lot of remixes, and that those remixes were really like all the DJs were really fond of those remixes. I mean, any club you go to, like we had our mixes playing over there, because obviously the artists who would remix tracks were really few.
Yeah,
Right. There
back
were a
then.
handful of DJs doing remixes, and we were luckily part of that small group. People would like eagerly wait for our mixes to come out so that they could play it out. During this time, I think Nikhil Chinappa was approached for, and back then this remix was a big thing. So
Yeah.
Bollywood has just started realizing that, okay, remixes are working, so let's do our own remixes in the albums. So I think Nikhil Chanappa was approached for that project, and Nikhil asked us, like, would you like to collaborate on this particular project? And who would say no to that? yeah, that's how we started. We got the files from Vishal Shekhar. We figured we I think we spent quite a lot of time on the first track. I think 3-4 months we had. Luckily, we had that kind of time, and yeah, we did churn out a good track, and the director loved it, and yeah, so that got approved, and immediately they gave us the second track. It's like, do you want to do something with this also? I was like, yeah, why not? And I think we ended up doing two tracks for Musafir. Then the same director did another movie. So he was like, do you want to work on this? I think Das was the movie.
Yes.
So he gave us Didar De. So that we did. And then we took files from, I think, Vishal Shekhar for Das Bahane, the title track.
Wow.
We did a remix of it, and it was supposed to be unofficial. We were supposed to keep it for ourselves, but it turned out so good that we approached T Series like, this is what we've done, and they were like, yeah, this is amazing. So would you like to do the whole album?
Wow.
Remixes. I was like, yeah, why not? So yeah, then after a few releases, we were in the Bollywood circuit for remixes.
I mean, if you can just go back in that time, that during the whole discovering music production, I'm pretty sure you were still confused on what your career was. What was your thought process? Did you want to be an artist? Did you want to be a music producer? I mean, Navid obviously took the whole DJ route first.
Yeah.
What was your career choice at that time? Because you were I mean, if you could just put things into perspective, because something interesting was coming in, but in terms of a career, in terms of a long term plan, where were you mentally in terms of what do you want to do with your career?
Initially, I followed Naved and I tried getting into DJing. But after a few gigs, I realized, okay, like I'm not meant for limelight. I'm not comfortable on stage. So I gave that up, and I started feeling more comfortable and more at peace when I'm doing work in the studio. So I think, yeah, I after I did a few tracks, and that feeling you get when your first track releases, like officially, it was a different feeling altogether. So yeah, at that moment I realized, okay, this is what I want to do for sure. But for a really long time, production was in my mind. But now I think it's time to move on into a different direction. So I'm trying my hand at composing.
Wow.
So I've done a few composition for different artists. So let's see what that route takes me.
Wow, great. So after that, tell us how did you go to Audiocube? We obviously want to talk about your academy, which is actually penned out a lot of talented artists. How did the whole concept coming, of creating something in terms of an education? Because you took that route, and I mean that's where your core calling is, where you want to teach people, where you want to, and you're very critical, you're very technical with what you're doing with music. So how did the whole formation of Audiocube happen?
So basically, I was teaching back then.
Okay.
I was teaching on a very small scale at my home or studio, and I would take like 2 or 3 students, and I would teach them, and
Okay.
that was going well. And I realized that the more I teach, the more I learn,
Okay.
because the students, they will ask some random question. If I don't have the answer for it, I feel really bad. So yeah, I feel like as a teacher, I should be able to answer any question that my student asks, even if it's really vague and really weird and really out of the box. I should have a solution at least for what they are asking for. So after I started teaching, I realized I have become a better producer, engineer than I was before. So that really helped. But the whole idea of AudioCube came when my partner Jay Nayak.
Yes.
So he was studying in Point Blank London back then.
Okay.
So he had just finished his course and he had come back and we met and we were just catching up and I was like, yeah, I'm teaching and I'm doing production and all that. So he's like, do you want to start an institute? I was like, yeah. There's hardly any good institute that generally wants to like teach people. So that's how the whole idea came about. So we both invested a little amount and we took up a place and we started teaching. And we haven't looked back since then.
Yeah, because another thing I wanted to ask you is that for me personally, myself as well, everything has had to change due to lockdown, and everything's kind of gone online. A
Yeah.
lot of courses, a lot of people are taking up teaching online. Everyone had to re-pivot to kind of teaching online. Uh,
Mhm.
I know a lot of people who've learned music themselves online.
Mhm.
What would be your point of view in terms of getting something learned online, and probably getting something like getting a mentor who's actually physically there with you, and getting the whole basics cleaned up? What's your opinion, or what's your point of view on that?
See, I'm not against online learning, because obviously it's possible, and there's a ton of information out there.
Yeah.
So even I learn online, but the difference, the learning of a pro to an amateur is, you can get confused really easily,
Hmm.
because there's such an abundance of knowledge out there. You won't know how to segregate them and to follow a particular pattern. But
Okay.
if I go to learn something online, I know exactly what I'm looking for, and I know if somebody is bullshitting out there, because
Hmm.
there's a lot of videos which teach you wrong things also. So that's
Okay.
that's one of the aspects. So an academy is basically teaching you the same thing, but in a more categorized, systematic way. So we understand. So basically, let me put it this way: that a YouTube video doesn't understand your learning capability.
Of
they
course.
they just put out what they know, but they are not, it's not interactive. They don't know how you are grasping what is being taught.
Hmm.
So I don't know about the other academies, but in Audiocube, we focus on individual students based on their core strength. So if one pattern is not working out, then we'll change the pattern so that it's more easy for that student to learn. So that is something that you can't get online. So
Okay.
that hands-on experience, basically after the class is done, I would make them sit in front of me and do exactly what I've done. And when they do something wrong, I'll correct them. So all these things are not available online for you.
Yeah, I think there are many places. I mean, we've tried to replicate what people do online, and even if
Mhm.
you miss one step, it seems very scary.
Yeah,
It's a very self discovery kind of a tool, whatever DAW you're using.
yeah.
But tell me one thing in terms of music production. I've always wanted to know how, if I had no knowledge, I myself personally have always been part of music, and I've always had a sense. So I'm pretty confident that tomorrow, if I probably go for an academy, or for learning, it'll be slightly easier for me. Tell me one thing: what if I just want to be a wannabe DJ, and I don't want to be a producer? Uh, can I just come and walk in and probably become a producer, or is it something that you need to kind of have some idea in terms of music, or some knowledge in terms of music?
See, basically, it's very simple. Like we can, like if I'm supplying you water, I can only give you as much as big container you bring.
Yes.
So if you bring a small container and you just want to be a wannabe DJ, you just want to show off, you're bringing like a small cup. So I'll give you that much information. But if you come with a big bucket, I'll give you a bucket full of water. So it
What?
depends on how much craving you have for that, how much passion you're bringing to the academy. The more passion you bring in, the more information I'll give you. Otherwise, if
uh,
you don't have the passion, you have a smaller cup, you can't take much more than what you want.
all right. What advice or what suggestion would you give to someone who's just probably walked into saying कि चलो मुझे FL Studio download करना है? What would be the
Mhm.
2 3 things which you would request, or have someone who's has an inclination towards learning music? What would be
Mhm.
your what direction would you send them to before probably coming on, to learn from you? Is there anything that you could probably some resources that you would like to share?
Uh, Few things that I would recommend people to practice and develop. One thing is patience, because it can get a bit tedious, because you're trying to learn an art, and it's a very vast sea of knowledge.
Of
So
course.
and it's, you are not gonna get that whole thing in one go. It's a very gradual process, and you have to be patient. I've seen a lot of people who start music, and in 2 3 months they'll get bored and they'll just start doing something else. But a few of them who are patient, after 3 4 months they start realizing, okay, I am getting a grasp of it. So once you cross that hurdle, it becomes very easy. Then it becomes very addictive, because then you're actually creating something, and it's going in the way that you want. So that's definitely the number one thing that I would ask anyone who wants to get into music. It's patience. Second thing would be, if you want to get into music, then learn music. Don't like, if you have the opportunity and if you are at the right age, there's no right age, but if you're like really young, go learn an instrument. It can be any instrument,
Okay.
but if you learn an instrument, I would say 60% of your hurdles are already covered in that, because arranging beats and learning the software is, it's not that difficult. But
Okay.
getting the ear training to know which sound is right, which key is right, which chords would go in the right place, all this knowledge, like, I've seen students who learn the software first, and then they struggle because they can't find the right chord or the right scale of the song, and basically they end up making something really weird, which is not harmonically in sync, like all the
Hmm.
elements are not going together. So once you learn your basically you learn any instrument, your ears get trained to identify sonics, harmonics, and you understand if something is going right or wrong. So it's definitely number two. And even learning music, again, it takes patience.
Yeah. How
So
much time did it
any
take for you to kind of, because I understand the frustration that happens when you hear an Avicii, ki, I want to make something like what he's probably done. There's a
yeah,
lot of there's a I don't know if you've gone through that, but there's that phase where in your head you have something that wants to come out, but on paper something else comes out. How much time did you take to overcome that hurdle of probably getting what's in your mind to sound like what's actually there in your mind?
I would say easily 3-4 years.
Okay, so how do I cut it short right now? Because आजकल के ज़माने में no one's going to wait for 3 4. So what would be? I mean, how do I cut it short?
For me, it was 3-4 years, because back then there was no resources for me to learn from. There was no mentor as such.
Of course.
But right now you have all the resources, and every artist, you can approach them. Like,
Of
not all
course.
of them will respond to your requests, but most of them will. Like, if you ask them a doubt, most of them will reply and they'll guide you.
Yeah.
And also, there are almost all the artists, they provide some kind of tutorial here and there.
Yeah.
So it's all you it the if I had to start that same journey of crossing that hurdle right now, I would say it would not take more than 1 year.
All right. So 1 year is a fair. I mean, of
Yeah,
course, if you put in the hard work, of course, if you're up and ready to give it all, I think 1 year
yeah,
is a fair enough time for you to kind of get to a level where you can start selling out things.
yeah, yeah.
Zoeb sir, another thing I would want to rather talk to you. I think you'll have a lot of knowledge about this. Is that I know a lot of artists who've made some really really good tracks. They've
Mm,
made some really really good music, but I think they
mm,
somehow lack in terms of packaging it and getting it out there, getting the distribution out there, getting it to work. What
mm.
suggestion or what advice would you give someone who's probably at a decent level but can't take it a step further?
So you're talking about more how to publish your music and how to.
Yes,
So, like, right now, it's a really good time and good era to be an artist, because you have all the resources at your hand. You're not at the mercy of any music label to release your music. Like, the first
yeah,
thing you can do is you can just put it out on YouTube and publish it. Basically, you just promote it,
of course.
or if you have some cash lying around, you can approach these distributors like TuneCore and Believe,
DistroKid, yeah,
DistroKid, CD Baby. You can approach them and spend some amount and can get it out to all the stores like Spotify, iTunes, and all that. You don't need a big label to support you, although a big label does help pushing your music to the next level, because they have that reach, they have that following. But it could be a nice starting point for you to just get some music out, and then you can approach labels and hope that they'll pick your music out. And if you're independent Indian, like if you do Hindi and Bollywood music, then Believe, I think, does a really good job of promoting your material. So you
all
have
right.
everything at hand.
All right. Another thing I wanted to ask you in terms of production, what are the challenges that you face? I mean, with the students who come back, what are the major challenges you face that there is a bit of a gap or a shadow which people of our generation aren't be able to overcome? Any difficulties that any students? What are the most common places where where your students have issues where they can't overcome that?
Again, I would say patience, because the current generation has no patience at all. Because I've had people who come into the academy and they're like, "मेरे को Hardwell बनना है." I was like, yeah, like, Hardwell didn't become Hardwell in one day, right? It took him quite some time to get there.
Of
So
course.
you'll have to take that same path. You can't just go at the position he's currently at. you'll have to start where he started.
Of course.
So but they are impatient. They want to be there right now. So I have to explain to them that it's a very gradual process. So be patient and be dedicated, because dedication is also a major problem, because they have so many things, and especially if they are young, they have so many things to do basically. So they can go, some of them might want to go into dancing, some might want to go into editing videos or making TikToks or whatever roads they are bored. So yeah, like a little bit of patience and dedication is all that's needed. And it's not bad to have like a high goal, but you have to realize that you have to start from zero. You can't directly jump to the top.
Great. We're almost going to get down to the end of the podcast. We have a fun segment that we've thought about that we should do. You're really really popular with you. I mean, you're on Instagram. Obviously, if you guys aren't following Zoeb, so you have to follow him. I think his entire Instagram is full of memes and very technical memes. But you do this very interesting thing on every Sunday. Ask Me Anything Sunday, and I see a lot of interesting questions. So what we've
Mhm.
done is we've asked your followers to give you a set of questions which you have with you, and
Okay.
you could probably answer them. Maybe about 3-4 questions if you have. Let me start off first. I had someone who basically had a question to ask
Mhm.
you. He's like, ask Zoheb Khan, why does he hate melodic techno and why is he away from melodic techno?
I know who that is. Uh, I don't hate it, but I don't love it either.
What exactly is wrong with melodic techno?
Nothing wrong. It's like there are so many flavors of ice cream. There's chocolate, vanilla, butterscotch. But you just like I love chocolate, but that it doesn't mean that vanilla is bad. It's just your taste. So yeah, there's nothing wrong. Like eventually, maybe I'll start liking it. But as of now, I have no hardcore fan base or fan moment with melodic. I
So
find it too
obviously,
repetitive.
obviously, we have Tushar who's asked. Tushar is a mutual friend of ours. He was also on a
Yeah.
podcast. The first episode, in fact, was with Tushar. Any reason why he would? I mean, what's the story behind this question? I would rather like to know because obviously you're Naved's brother, and obviously
Mhm.
he's doing big things in his scene.
Yeah.
What exactly was the story behind this?
So even Tushar is trying his
Yeah, yeah,
hand
of
in
course.
production, and he has like improved a lot from past few years, and he has been doing some really good tracks. And I don't know why he wants me to get into melodic techno, because I think that's what he wants to do. So
Yeah.
he wants me to have that interest as well. Although I try to help him as much as I can, but I don't share the same passion. But yeah, technically I can help him with sounds and how it should flow. But yeah, passion wise, I'm not there in melodic techno.
Great. Okay, if you could just go ahead to your questions, whatever questions you've had, let's just take them up. 3-4 interesting questions because you get like a lot of technical ones, and then you get some really very lame ones, which you obviously happily answer. So if you could just go ahead and take us through that segment.
So I'll go through the most frequently asked questions that I generally get during these
Okay.
Ask Me Anything Sundays. So one of them would be which DAW is the best, and like generally I answer Studio One because that's the one I'm using right now. But
Yes.
any DAW that you're comfortable on, I think it's fine. If it gets the job done, if it takes you from point A to point B, then it's a good software, and there's no problems in any DAWs as such. They all are very really good, and they give you all the tools that you need for making a good track. And people think that I hate FL Studio now. It's not that I hate, but uh, it's just that the complicated work that I do right now, like it's everything. It's recording, production, mixing, mastering, everything. So FL Studio was not able to handle it for me. So it
Okay.
was giving me lags and latency issues and all that. I'm sure they must have fixed it by now, but I found my comfort in Studio One, which is doing everything that I want very comfortably without eating up a lot of CPU. So I'm happy with that.
Great.
Some of the other questions that I get is generally regarding mixing and mastering. And although it's a very vast topic, but I'll try to sum it up in really small, that mixing is all about what you can hear. Because if
Okay.
you can't hear the problems, you can't fix the problems. So the first thing that you need to do is ear training. And ear training is not something that someone can teach you online. You need a mentor or someone who can pinpoint, okay, this is the project and this is where the problem is, and you have to actually make the student hear, okay, I'll just boost this up and you can hear where the problem is.
Yeah.
And that's how my student learn. So I exactly show them what I hear as a problem in this particular track and what I think is not a problem. So I would first ask them, like, what do you think is the problem with this particular sample, and then I'll show them what I think is wrong with it. So that's basically ear training. Eventually, after doing a few mixed sessions with my students in the background, they start pointing it out. Okay, okay, there's the problem over there. I think you missed it out. I was like, now you are ready. So yeah,
Yeah.
you definitely you need for it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a they say, right, don't trust your ears more than the bars on your monitor screen. So I think makes a lot of sense. Great.
Yeah,
Any
and
other
same
questions
goes
that
for
yeah.
your mastering and recording. Also, it goes the same way. And a lot of times people ask, like one question that was asked was how to make powerful drops, and
Okay.
that's generally a very common problem amongst producers. And I've seen my students struggle with that a lot. So what the problem is, most of them, they start with the beginning of the track, and
Okay.
they basically pump in all the energy and all their creative input in the intro, and by the time they reach the drop, they don't have enough,
Yes.
like they don't have more to put. So it's like climbing a ladder, right? If you have
Yeah.
to climb up 100 ladders, 100 steps, sorry. And so going from 0 to 100 would take a lot of effort, but if you start from the
Yeah.
top and come down, it becomes very easy. So my suggestion
Yeah.
to all the producers, you start with the drop, put in all the energy and everything, and then you basically move out from that. So it becomes much easier to go from a heavier project in, and you just basically remove some elements to create like your intros and all that. So that's the advice I would
Wow.
give them for creating powerful drop.
That's beautiful. I mean, I've actually never thought of it myself. It's a beautiful, beautiful suggestion. I mean, it just goes to say how much of knowledge you have in the scene. I mean, in so many years, I've never really thought of it this way. Start off with the drop and take it down. It's easier to kind of remove things than to add things because there's less creativity required to remove things. So great, great
Yeah.
idea. I think wow, that's something which I'm definitely going to take back home. Any of the stupid questions that you keep getting, because I see a lot of dumb ones as well. So let's float a couple of them in the air as well.
Uh, Initially, when I just started, I used to get a lot of melody itni chocolatey kyun hai, and I would simply reply them because it has chocolate in it. And yeah, and I keep getting what's your favorite animal, and sometimes friends would just ask some personal things. So yeah, and like nothing interesting actually. Like I'll have to go through my Instagram feed to realize what they've asked. But yeah, I also get a lot of how to extract a cappella from songs, which has
Oh
become
yeah,
very
yeah.
easy off late. Yeah, yeah. So you can use RX7 and all that and just get it.
All right, Zoheb Khan, we're almost done to the end of the podcast. It was phenomenal. There's so many things I can actually ask you. It's such a vast topic, and we don't want to make sure that the podcast gets too technical for our new
Mhm.
listeners. So it was great to have you in the podcast. Before we let you go, any suggestions, any tips that you would give, which would definitely help producers, artists, and even people who are trying to take this up as a career. Before we let you go, we'd really like to hear from you.
See, I would give you my personal experience that if you ever feel that you know everything and you know all about production, just slap yourself and get back to learning. Because that that's never gonna happen, because you will never know enough to claim that. If
True,
anybody
very
claims that, he's probably the most stupidest person out there. So yeah, like never ever stop learning, and always try and see what how you can improve yourself. Like I always try to incorporate whatever I learn. I'll and also, yeah, one more thing. If you're watching our tutorial, revisit that tutorial after a few months, because every time
okay.
you watch that, you might take away something new. Because I've seen couple of tutorials and videos, and after watching them 3 4 times, I realized, okay, I missed that particular point, I missed that particular point. And some of them are really gems, like I still use them in my productions and mixing. So don't just watch it once and let it go. Keep revisiting those tutorials, because you can find some gold in there.
Phenomenal. Revisit your tutorials and always make sure that
Yeah.
slap yourself if you feel that you know everything about production. So these two takeaways will be awesome. Thank you, Zoeb, sir. This was great having you on the podcast. And you are one of our finest guests and very technically sound. Whenever you get a chance, I will. And whenever I get a chance, I definitely would want to invite you back on the podcast. And if you could just send us any place where we could probably, check out your academy and your Instagram links where people could find you.
You can visit audiocube.com, and we have all the information over there. Or you can follow me on Insta. And if you anybody has any questions, I keep getting questions in my inbox, and I always try to reply to them, unless you try to be over smart and you try to be rude. Then I have to block you. But if somebody asks me a question, I definitely answer it to them.
Great. So, all of you guys, if you guys are listening, you can always ask me whatever questions I can route it through Zoeb sir, or else you can directly get in touch with him on Instagram. You can go to audiocube.com. Get in touch with us. We want to build a community where we are helping each other, especially with someone who has any doubts technically. I think he's always here to kind of give you feedback and help you. But obviously, we want to make sure that we all grow together as an Indian community in terms of dance music specifically. Also, in general, as the whole producer community, we want to make sure that we're helping each other and get away from all the hatred. So, if sir, that was awesome having you on the podcast. Thank you so much for being a guest, and looking forward to hearing some more music from you.
Yeah, hopefully soon.
Cheers. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.